basically, if I could break down a wall to, create a world without walls, in my opinion, I would break down the wall that sits between our heart and our brains where it comes to the organizations we work in, right? Very much like the Great Wall, it's been there forever. We don't actually, it's always been there. Can we actually get rid of it? It's between our heart and our brain. Our brain goes inside to the office, our heart stays outside. Our heart stays outside the wall. And if you think about it, what are the words we use inside the organization? Plan, do, think, know, process. Those are brain words. You don't hear love, compassion, feelings, maybe a little. They throw that in every now and then. You don't hear connection, identity. Do me a favor. Everybody here, point to yourself. Point to your heart. Nobody pointed to their head. You could have pointed to your ear. You pointed to your heart. This is the identity of me to me. And you don't let that in the workplace. It's a big deal, right? I mean, you've heard it from the other speakers today, some of the connections, some of the things in which hearts and minds need to work together. But to me, it's incredibly, incredibly important. Now, I could paint a picture of it for you by saying, if you do this, organizations, every problem will be solved. All your people practice issues will be off the table. I don't want to do that. I want to say the other way, because that's nebulous. You could get into some arguments. I want to say there is no path to solving for any of your people practice problems unless you allow the whole person to come inside your organization. Think about it. Diversity. Every organization's CEO has diversity, top 3, top 5 in terms of their objectives. We've been working on that since 10 years and 11 days before I was born. I'm 45, I'll tell you that. Right? That's a long time, and we've gone down. We haven't done better. How can I foster diversity if I come in and I'm not me, right? How can I foster diversity with you when you're not you? I don't know who I'm talking to all the time. Because an organizational brain, which is what you asked me to talk on, by the way, I was thinking, what is it? An organizational brain is 55,000 brains, or whatever the number is, sucked up into one sum total, of the brain. And that's all it is. It's just the brain, right? So in terms of our hearts, we leave that outside the walls. And diversity is at risk. We have things like work-life balance. Why would I want to balance those things that sit outside the wall that I can use my heart and my brain for with this thing in the middle that I can just use my brain? I don't want to balance those, right? I have no desire to balance those. So talk about work-life balance, but I don't even want it. I don't want retention. I don't want to be in the office if I'm not allowed in. The authentic me is not allowed in. The me that I identify as me, I'm not allowing that person in, or the organization isn't allowing that person in. So in essence, why do I want to stay one day? You have to bribe me with a gold watch to make me stay 30 years, and I don't want to stay a day. Now, the motto on this building says I will not complain, so I need to stop. But if you think about it, development and change and all these things, how can I do that if I don't know, if I'm starting from what, right? What am I changing from? So I started thinking, where did this come from? How did this develop? Because, we're humans and we started corporations, and so why did we let that happen? So if you go way back in time, I'm going to make sure I'm not tripping over chairs. If you go way back in time and you think about where we started with steel mills and where we were actually making something to sell, right? We taught people how to do something. You do this and this and this and this, and you get that. I can sell it. I can measure it. I can say you did it better than he did and you're promoted. It's all brain stuff. I might have even not minded that I left my heart outside the wall because that's for home. Brain is for work. And that was all I needed until services came into the economy, right? So now I have to determine how to act. I should actually look at what it is I do for this corporation to actually make money. So then they started this culture exercise. And this is all good, by the way. It's just not enough, right? So what they first did, they began, to me it was basically a brand exercise, but it culminated into a poster on the wall. So those of you who work in an organization now, read along with me because you'll take yours into mind when you're thinking about this. You know, the poster that sits on the wall of your organization probably says teamwork. Probably says accountability. See more smiles. Probably says customer service. Excellence, that one I love. They say 4 to 6 words, or every one of them to me looks the exact same in a way, right? These are big, ideal words that every one of you would have a different example of, right? So that's a culture, that's a brand culture, and we build that so that the company can, when the customer looks underneath the circus tent, they see people acting that way, right? But at this point, all we have, and it probably worked for a while, we have the process, right? And now we have the culture. And the two together were something that we would say to employees. We would say, I want you to align with this. So the word alignment came into the vernacular, right? Well, pretty soon, people started leaving companies. And, they were telling their bosses and telling their HR folks that I'm going to go where my passion sits. I want to go to do something I love. I want more connection with my boss. These are heart words. We don't know what to do with those. So we get these words coming in, and we think, we're going to change the word. It's not alignment anymore. We need to get engagement. So I'm going to do something that, we have to pull some emotion into this. We've got to, the CEO can do some rah, 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 and, look how great we did last year, and look who we are today, and all of this sort of stuff. And, and I'm going to get, and this is my phrase, I think it's hysterical, we're going to get emotional buy-in. They tried, bless them. They got emotional in there, but buy-in, they want me to buy into the process and then buy into the culture. That's it. So we're still dealing with the heart words, right? We're still trying to get to that emotional element. And now you'll hear companies talking about fulfillment, alignment, engagement, fulfillment. We're not going to get anywhere until we realize that we've got to let the heart in. The whole person has to come in the door. The authentic you, the person that you've identified like this, has to come in the door, right? So now, it's a big problem, and I've told you bits and pieces about why it's super important for the organization, right? And that in and of itself is enough to get people to hope to make changes, but actually it's important for the individuals, because when you as an individual bring your heart into the office, you're doing yourselves a service. So now I'm going to think back to my cognitive behavioral stuff and say, all of you choose behaviors every day, right? So you choose behaviors when you go into the office, and every single day you get feedback on those behaviors, and you return and do some more of them, and that's you making choices every day. When stress enters the picture, however, you begin to lose access from those behaviors, right? Now this is kind of important because you're going to lose access to some really cool stuff. All of you need to understand that when you start losing stuff, you think of somebody who's under stress, they might not be able to listen. They might not be able to manage risk. I see some nods. They might not be able to see where they are in the milestones in their career, right? So when you get to this point and you have some stress and you lose these things, you're at risk and your organization is at risk. So the thing here to understand is that we start out with stress because we came in and we left our heart outside the wall. So now, if we could just bring it inside the wall, we wouldn't start out with that stress, because you know what's going to happen? We're going to have an earthquake in Japan, and we're going to have a recession, and we're going to have our spouse losing his or her job, and stress is going to stack and stack and stack until we have a heart attack. I rest my case.